Here I've been nominated to speak, but there are a couple of authors here. I work in Fiontar, Scoil, which is a School of Irish in Dublin City University over the other side of the river. My colleagues are Justin O'Gleason, who was working on this project as a postdoctoral researcher, though he's moved on to another job since then. Deirdre Ní who's an independent researcher based in Russellville near Árann. She's from Árann from her parents. She's from Árann. Ronan Doherty, who's a software developer and has worked with us on nearly all of our sites, and who's an excellent software developer and who's very good at creating things like this. As you'll see, he's done a lot of work on Dúchas as well. Brian O'Reilly, who's up there at the back, he's the technical manager, so if I say anything awful about the technical side, he can correct me, I'm sure. And Christopher McCarthy, who you know, the Director of the National Folklore Collection. So we're going to be talking, and even in that you'll see that there are different areas of expertise, so I'm going to try and discuss how that works. So I'm going to talk about the National Folklore Collection a little bit, but I think you all know it. Bailiúchán Béaloidis Árann, which is the work of this project. The project itself, just showed to you a little bit the results and a few things that we've learned. I know it's just after lunch, so I'm going to keep it very light. There won't be an awful lot of theory here. There's going to be a few nice pictures, so I hope that's the right level for 1:30. Good. So the National Folklore Collection, you know this, but it's based here in University College Dublin. And the digitisation of this is a joint project between UCD and DCU, where I work. We call it Dúchas.ie, meaning Dúchas. Get in Bale or Dúchas? Heritage, thank you. So it's kind of a heritage site, if you like. UCD are the archivists, they're the experts on archival material and on the material itself. We would have the project management skills and we would have the technical skills as well, and maybe the editorial skills to draw that together. And we've been working with them for about 10 years now. We've created the Dúchas website. It's been extremely successful, and that's been a very, very good cooperation between those two sides, if you like. Where I work, it's called Gaeilge, and we work on resources for the Irish language. So we work on things like the National Terminology Database, the corpora, various corpus projects, Place Names Database of Ireland, Look@em.ie, a project for Irish language biography. So if you work in Irish language, you probably know these sites. If you don't, it doesn't matter, but they're sort of general resources for the Irish language. So you see how this ties in with Dúchas. So now to turn to Árann. I'm sure, again, that you know this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. This is where Árann is, also known as Inishmore, incorrectly, because it's a Gaeltacht area, it's an Irish-speaking area, therefore we use the Irish language names. It's that island there, the big one, with the blue line around it. It's the largest of the three Aran Islands. It's off the west coast of Ireland. About 800 people live there. It's an Irish-speaking area, so it's a Gaeltacht area, and would be one of the stronger Gaeltacht areas in that most people speak Irish there still, though that may be changing. So it's a very particular place in Irish culture, if you like, in Irish, symbolically even, it's very important as kind of a centre point of Irish, what would you call it, sense of self, I suppose. It's also beautiful. If you've been there, you know there are enormous sea cliffs, you know that there are prehistoric forts and so on. There's a lot of signs of early Christianity. There's a sort of a karst-like landscape. It's like the Burren with very, very particular flora and fauna. It's a particularly special place. There's a rich heritage there of folklore and tradition. Lots of collectors, researchers, the likes of Singh, Tim Robinson, the cartographer. Other people have worked there over the years. And why wouldn't they? So this is some example of some things that have been published, and this is a quick overview. So collections of photographs by Bill Doyle, Tim Robinson's masterwork, Stones of Árann Labyrinth, books about Irish Árann, history, tradition, Man of Árann, again the film, a Nullig here, which would be a book of memories of growing up in Árann, an Árann reader, short stories, Walls of Árann by an artist, Sean Scully, again this map by Tim Robinson, and that sings the Árann Islands there. So that's just a small sample of the sort of thing that you have. So it's enormously rich in terms of material that has been based on it and material that has come from it as well. So that's great, and there's been a huge collection of that. One thing that hasn't been there until now was a collection of material developed by people on the island, collected by people on the island. So there have been memoirs and so on. But the folklore collection of Árann, which Bailiúchán Béaloidis Árann, meaning folklore collection, this is what I'm going to talk about today. So this group called the Mrá Fintrach, which means enterprising women. So this was a community employment scheme that was started around 1994. It was started as a community employment scheme to upskill people, to bring people together. And they started this group that would work on heritage and on things like place names, on collecting field names, on maybe on mapping the cemeteries and things like that, and as well as that, on looking at folklore. So they were a group of women by definition, and they were working together on this. One of the things that they did was recording islanders, recording community locations, taking photographs, scanning old photos, collecting photos, creating maps, identifying local place names and so on. So there are lots of groups like this all over Ireland, doing all sorts of exemplary work, writing this material down before it's too late, collecting it and bringing it together, if you like. And it's enormously important work. It's much more important than, I would say, the archivists and so on. It's the actual field work of collecting this material before it's too late. They published several things, books of prayers, Nollaig Marví, book about Christmas, a calendar, books about of maps and roads and wells and hills and so on, and photographs and so on. So they've done an awful lot of work and very, very high standard work. Here they are a few years ago at one of the events. So that's fine. And they have this collection, Bailiúchán Béaloidis, the folklore collection, which is the only major collection of the island's folklore to be collected by islanders themselves. When they founded this, their two main objectives, as they told us, was to firstly preserve Ireland folklore for future generations, because these things get lost, and secondly to make it accessible. And to whom? It was for the islanders themselves. It was very important to them that it was the people of the island who could look at this, could use this. The children of the island would be able to look back on this heritage and take pride in it. So that was absolutely their focus, and they were very clear about that from the start. So how to do that? They recognised themselves that they needed to, some of the members of the Fiontar were getting towards retiring, they were getting towards giving up, leaving this project, and they recognised that there was going to be a problem in terms of keeping this material. They had it was all digitised, it was on computers, but they were worried about the future of it, and rightly so. So they were worried about the long-term preservations, and they wanted it to be preserved as part of or in the National Folklore Collection with all the infrastructure around that. They also wanted to show the material, but they wanted to show it in context, in its own right, as a collection. They were very clear they didn't want to just add it to the National Folklore Collection or to the Digital Repository of Ireland or anything else where it would be part of something bigger. They wanted it to be a collection of its own, and for them to explain it and to give context to it. So they came to us and came to UCD, and we talked to each other in 2021 by Zoom mostly, and we supported them. We helped them put together a funding application to various organisations, which they did, and they got funding, and we started on this about this time last year. So the plan that we put together for them was basically 5 items: that we would see to the long-term preservation of the material by ingesting it in the National Folklore Collection. That material will be input into Ardon, which is the management system that we use for the Dúchas collection. So it's basically an archival management system. And that we would clean it up and complete the material. So we would identify gaps and so on and clean it up. That we would give them access to this material in Ardon, and that we would help them get used to using it and provide guides and training for them to use it. Fourthly, that we would create a website so that we could display the material with search functions so it would be easily searched. And finally, of course, that we would host it. So we said initially in the part of the funding agreement that we'd host it for 5 years, and then either we would continue or that it would be ingested into the main Dúchas collection. We're not going to leave it anyway. At the end of 5 years, it's not going to be dumped or anything like that, but a plan will need to be made at that stage of what we're going to do with it. So that was fine, and that was agreed. So now to take you through very quickly. So what we did, we developed a database, an SQL server database with photos, recording, entries. They're stored as XML documents. Their indexes are based on the XML data, and we created entries using Ardon, our system, and you can search the editorial history, and it's all sorted there. We connected it to. We have a large database of people. So many of the people in the Dúchas collection are listed in that database as separate named people. So we connected all the people to that. We found out who everyone in every photo was, which is no joke. So if you have lineups of football teams, they went through and identified every single person, because that's what an island community is. Everyone knows everyone. And then we connected to Lugannam, which is a place name database. So we connected every place to the place name database, so you could do nice things with maps and so on, and to GeoNames, which is the international identifier for place names. So we did all that. And then the main job really was the editorial work. So that was checking the metadata, cleaning it up, and making sure it was consistent. Copyright and ownership questions with Cleircín dealt with quite a lot. So were we allowed to publish the materials? Was it okay to publish the photos or not? And who owned them really? And also questions about photographs involving children and things like that would have to be sorted out. Standardising descriptions, so putting in controlled vocabularies for descriptions, and identifying, as I said, people and places and linking them to Loganem, to the database of people, and to Enem, which is the National Biographies database. So that was no joke. That was several months' work. You see in the photo here, that's just Gaeilge, who was working with us. He took a trip down to Árann. It didn't take much persuasion to send him down to Árann for a week. And there were two of them, Ralph Fiontar, Anya and Barbara there, where he trained them up, and there was an exchange of knowledge. He was showing them how to use the system, and they were giving him information about it, who the people were, and so on. So what's in the collection then? There are three main parts. One of them is the photographs collection. This is about 900 photos, more really, but 900 are available on the site. They're captured by Bailiúchán Béaloidis Árann, by the project, or collected from other sources. So collected from other sources that were available, scanned and so on. They cover from about 1880 to 2019. It's an enormous range. All sorts of things are in there. We put in the metadata that they had. So you have the date, the location, the photographer, some information about what it is, the people who are in it listed, so you can search them, and then any other information, and then the archival references and so on. So some examples. Here's a very stern-looking baby from about 1890, but again, we know who these people are. They're all listed there, which is wonderful. Here's your typical Curragh scene from Inishmore. Here's a picture of, I think it's a bonfire at Tinnacrive, maybe as in midsummer or something like that. Here's Micheál O'Murray launching some local event. And here's the Red Bull cliff diving competition, which they've been running there for years. So, as you see, it's a real picture, and that's only a few pictures that I took randomly. There's all sorts of photos. It really shows every aspect of life on the island, kind of the older material and the newer material as well. Lots of photos of parties, of events, of sports days and things like that, as well as older photos of more folklore, if you like, material. And then we have audio recordings. So that's about 50 hours of audio recordings. Captured by, again, the women who went out and interviewed people over the last 25 years. Most of them have been transcribed, which is wonderful. And there's information there about the date, about the people, about what language it's in, some description about what they're talking about and so on. And then you have the transcript itself there on the other side. Again, this is a wonderful resource. It's wonderful because it captures a very particular dialect of Irish. We're using it in other projects, in the National Corpus project, for example, as an example of dialect. But I think they're particularly interesting because they're a really rounded description of life on the island, and very, very good in that way. And they were done, again, the point is that they were done by islanders, so it wasn't somebody landing in and saying, tell me about yourselves, the anthropologist as we saw in the cartoon yesterday. It's different from that. It's people being interviewed by their neighbours. So I think that's extremely rich. And there'll certainly be scope for research based on that. So we took all that, we made a nice website. It's a subdomain of Dúchas.ie, so it's bba.dúchas.ie. There's text search, there's various search tools. You can browse through things, you can open the photos, you can look at them. And as well as that, something we developed for this was a persistent audio player, meaning that you can click on something and be listening to it and be still browsing around the website and looking at other things as well, which just makes it the whole thing easier. This is something that will be launching on the main Dúchas collection in the coming weeks as well. So, there it is. And it's, let me just have a quick look at it for you. So here it is, bba.dúchas.ie. It's in Irish and English, obviously. We tried to make it as pretty as we could, because that matters. When you're creating a public website, it's actually much more important than I think we usually give it credit. It has to look nice, and it has to be attractive, and it has to draw people in. And you can go in and you can look at photographs. Here's people having their lunch in 2003. So again, it's the launch of a book. So it's photos taken from a book launch. You have lots of other things. You have people, it's island events. It's more interesting if you're an islander, but there's a lot of material that's interesting for anyone. And you can search through it by the archival reference, by the person, by the location, again using loganem.ie, the country, and so on. And here's your bonfires and so on. And then we have audio material. Again, in every case you have some information about it and you can listen about it. So that's a lecture on historical ecology of Árann as it happens. So it's a real mixture again of different sorts of material, but most of it is interviews. We also have a few videos, which only a couple of ones, somebody's 100th birthday. Then there was another one, there's again the birthday party here, and a heritage project that was done by sixth class, a 5th and 6th class in the National School. Again, it's a real mixture, but it's interesting. And then you have a list here of the people. So everyone here is listed that is in the site. And we have different ways of listing the ordinary form. So without the O or the NAC, which is a problem if you're dealing with Irish surnames. And you can put birth date by surname, bearer form, and ordinary form. So there's various ways of searching that. Anyway, back to the presentation. So we launched it. We went out to Árann on Nullig na Man, which is the 6th of January, by plane, and we went out. We had a huge gathering. When you consider there's only 800 people on a good day on the island, there was about 100 people at the launch. People absolutely crowded in. There was a big event, a big do, and it was clearly very, very important to people, and it was really a source of pride to have such an event. Here we got a bit of publicity, various websites talking about, again, making folklore accessible, and that was the importance of it. So just some observations, I think, and I think talking to Christopher beforehand, we were talking about what really matters about this is that it was collaboration. We know lots about project management, we know a bit about editorial work, we know a lot about technical, making nice websites. Christopher and his team know a lot about archives, and they're the experts in that, and in copyright and in ethics and in how to make things available. And then the Mhreá Fintrach were experts in, they knew the people, they knew the places, they'd done the interviews, they knew all this stuff inside out and backwards. As well as that, so there was that three-way collaboration. One thing that we found, and we discussed it afterwards, we all agreed that it was very important that we had Deirdre Ní Chonghaile, who is an expert. She's from Árann, but she's also an expert. She's got a background in archiving and so on, and she really understands both sides of this work. So she understands how metadata works. She understands what a database is, not that other people didn't, but she had a very clear understanding of how things ought to look, and she'd worked on exhibitions and things like that before, whereas the Mhreá Fintrach, the women in Árann, maybe didn't have that technical knowledge. So it was very important to us to have somebody there to understand both sides. And we said afterwards that if we were to do a project like this again, we wouldn't do it without somebody like that who would be able to help us see both sides. So that's the need for an intermediary, and I think that's something we've very much learned from this. Another thing we took out, of course, it took longer than we expected, but no surprise there. And then the need for continuous training and support for people. If you're working on something like this, you need to have somebody at the end of the phone going, oh no, I've deleted it. You have to be able to provide that help. And we think that this could be reduced for other groups. We think that's scalable, and that if there were other groups came to us, we would probably have to do something similar for them as well. So the funders, Leader and Cóir Leireacht, the Heritage Council and the local co-op paid for it. It didn't cost very much because we did it as part of the Dúchas project, and we'd just like to acknowledge them. So that's it. Thank you very much.